إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل كما جاء في محكم التنزيل. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. Dear brothers and sisters, we always begin with thanks, gratitude and praise. If we recognize where we live and the favors that we're blessed with and what we soak up every day, then we'll realize that we have a merciful, loving Creator. We live in a world where there is flaws and hardships and difficulties, and there is conflict and strife. That's the nature of this world. It's not perfection. So we seek a connection with the perfection of our beloved Creator, Provider, and Sustainer in order to have peace. And that's what they call sabr. Realizing that this world will come to an end sooner than later. And if I deal with this world on its terms, in the way that I was guided by my Creator, then I will be in great shape, spiritually speaking. My spiritual value and wealth will be elevated. The number one distinguishing human trait is rational, intellectual thought. We have a capacity for creative reasoning and thought and expression. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ. He created the human being and distinguished it from all other animals and beings and life forms on earth with a sophisticated way to express creative, rational thought. Which does what? It puts us into a moral sphere, a place of moral representation. How do I affect others? How do others affect me? And how do I deal with that? Right? That's the bottom line of what makes us human. And for this reason, the early linguists of Arabic grammar, they referred to the human as aqil. And they referred to the animal, the plant, the stars, the sun, the moon, the rocks as ghayru aqil. Right? So humans were referred to as rational, intellectual beings, and everything else as non-rational, intellectual beings. This is the fundamental thing that Allah has both. It's a double-edged sword. He has blessed us with, I'm aware of myself. I see my own self and I think for myself and I rationalize. At the same time, therefore, I'm accountable for what I say and do. Right? It makes perfect sense. The meaning of the root, ayn, qaf, lam, it comes, like when you have a similar root, like ayn, qaf, dal, it means to tie down, it means to tame, it means to keep in proper place in a specific way. So our scholars said that how does that relate to rational intellectual thought? That this rational intellectual thought, it will protect you from the things that will cause harm to you, or it will promote for you that which will benefit for you. So I said, يُلْجِمُكَ عَنَ الْمَهَالِكِ. It will keep you in line from the things that could cause your destruction. Right? And so that's what it's supposed to be. And so as Muslims, we have been taught by our great scholars of the elevated knowledge of Islamic legal theory that the whole of the divine law is there for 5 reasons. 5 fundamental necessities that must be preserved, protected, and promoted. Number 1, religion, a connection with God, pure monotheism, recognizing the source of everything, the blessings that we receive, and the eventual meeting and accountability that we have to Him, right? Number one. Number two, human life is sacred, right? All human life except for a person that's trying to harm you, trying to cause damage or oppression or harm to you. In that case, their life is not sacred. But anyone else, Muslim or non-Muslim, according to the consensus of scholars, their life is sacred, right? And our hope is that we, with our life, and those who don't necessarily know about Islam, could see that beauty with their life, because that's where their life came from. And number three, which we're going to talk about today, is the human intellect, our rational faculties. It is seen as something so consequential and so important to the Muslim identity, to have a deep thought and reasoning and contemplation of reality. And the reason is because that will put you into the right mold to protect you from this world's attachment. See, this world is not eternal. We're all going to die, and when we die, then we'll be facing a judgment and an eternal place, right? So the Arabic scholars, they said mi'qal is like a fortress. Mi'qal, from the same thing as aql, right? Which means intellect and reason, right? It's a place that will protect you. So someone who's properly using their intellect and reason, those people will be protected in this life. And so Islam is deeming that as a huge consequential point. As you go through the Quran, you will find almost every single page has some sort of injunction, command, encouragement to think, to ponder, to rationalize, to contemplate, to think. And it does it in many different contexts. Allah tells you that when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to creation and the world around you, why things are and how they function, and the system that you're part of, and what you do and how it affects the law, legal issues, the concept of character. He uses this concept, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Don't you rationalize, don't you think about it. If only you were rationalized. لِهَذَا لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ. This message is for a type of people who are rational and deep thinkers, right? So the Quran emphasizes this heavily. So somebody might say, how come illiteracy is so high in the Muslim world? How come we see a lot of very irrational attitudes and policies? This is the number one reason why the Muslim world has gone down over the last few centuries. Just plummeting, right? The solution is right there in the Holy Quran. Islam is not a set of rules and regulations, and it's not a culture. Islam is not something you inherit from your society and you assume that's what it is, and so whatever I learned growing up, whatever I saw people doing, that's pure Islam that should be taken as holy and untouchable. And I'm now an old person and I have a job, and so I don't study and research, and I don't need to do that anymore. That is absolutely a trick from shaitan, because it is conflicting with so many ayahs and hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. So this is one of the fundamental things. The Quran tells us, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَهُمْ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ إِنَّ شَرَّ الدَّوَابِّ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الصُّمُّ الْبُكْمُ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Don't be someone. Don't be that contradictory person. Don't be that arrogant person who doesn't even see your reality, where you say, oh, I hear, I know the message, I understand Islam, I understand my purpose in life, and then you really don't. And then he says, the worst of the beasts of the world are those who are deaf and blind, and they don't rationalize or understand their religion. When he says beasts, who is he really talking about? He's talking about humans. إِنْهُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. Allah says in some places in the Quran, people can be like animals and even worse than them, more misguided. Because an animal functions on a thought, an impulsive thought about benefit or harm. Oh, that looks good, I'll do it. Animal just does it. Oh, that looks like scary, I'll get away from it, right? Humans can think about the whole reality, the why. We can think about the why. Why is it like that? Why should I do this? What happens if that happens? We can think strategically, a chess mind, right? Which is why it's one of the most fun games for people who think deeply, right? So, for those of you who were born and raised Muslim, I'm going to say out of the so many hundreds of people that I've met that embraced Islam, this is the number one thing, particularly from the West, when we come from America or England or whatever and we embrace Islam. The number one thing when we're reading the Quran that really pulls us in is this deep appeal to rational thought. Right? It's like, that's why we convert. We had all these questions. Reading the Bible seemed long and drawn out. You couldn't really take in what's it trying to say. Why is this story here? Why do we have a whole lineage of people? What's the purpose of guidance in that? While reading the Bible, or by reading some other scriptures, it seems like some parables that you can't really grasp as too deep. The Quran just really gets to the point. And it clarifies things in a very methodical way that makes everything make sense. You think about creation, creator, knowledge. He's inspired everything to be the way it is. Like when we think, okay, whoever invented the computer, whoever built a computer and programmed it, right? Can that person predict to you everything that's going on, why it's doing what it's doing, what it may do if such and such happens? Are they magical? No, they're just simply the creator of the computer. This is not like some deep philosophical, how does he know that what's going to happen in the computer? He made it. That's why Allah keeps talking about خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ. Then he starts talking about why the sun and the moon and the stars and why the winds and the precipitation and the mountains and the why. He talks so much about the why. Yet right now in many places in the Muslim world, if you ask the Sheikh why, or if you're in the Islamic school why, or you ask Mama and Baba why, they get angry with you. These are the rules. You do it because that's what we said. So this is what we've done. We've lost that intellectual, rational, deep thought religion that was once a world civilization respected by so many people. I was recently talking to a gentleman who's a humble history teacher here in Tulsa, teaches world history in high school. And he came and he said, I wanted your feedback because with all this talk about caliphate and what we know from the history books, I'm just having a hard time of how you would follow a religion like that. Right? He has all the wrong information, twisted information. He doesn't have deep information that exists about the reality of the history of Muslims and the Islamic world. Right? It's being hidden, it's being averted, it's being twisted, it's being minimalized and marginalized to make what? Europe is the great everything, and the modern America is above reproach. So just change in whatever you have of beliefs and practices and ideas and cash them in for what we've got. That's basically what's happening. A globalized cultural hijacking. Dear brothers and sisters, I come here to tell you as someone who I am so happy and blessed that I've been touched by this message as you all have been. My personal attitude has been, from what I've read in these things, read books from different people. Read non-fiction books. Watch Netflix documentaries that are deep, analyzing subjects that have huge relevance to the world we live in, yet nobody's privy because they're too busy working so hard just to make ends meet, and then they come home to Dancing with the Stars. This is the reality, or Game of Thrones. We got brothers that I know of. Good guy. He's like, I got some free time from college, now I'm going to binge watch Narcos. Some very immoral show about drug dealers and all this. Sinful, evil stuff. Well, at least I have some free time, I can have fun with this. Intoxication has many different manifestations. It's a deep concept. It's not just getting drunk at a bar. It's a very deep concept. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he talks about this in his book. He says, he has a book called I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in an Rabb al-Alameen. This is the formal statement to anyone who would give a legal edict, a fatwa. Very deep book of amazing academic style. He basically divides the concept of applying law into two categories. It requires 2 elements, otherwise it will not be done properly. All scholars, when they study ifta, they have to study this book. It's your basic curriculum. Half is understanding the nuances, the linguistics, the different sciences of hadith and aqidah and seerah and tafsir and law and interpretive methodology. That's half. The other half is well-studied understanding of who you're going to apply the law to. And you don't go into any details until you understand both very well. You don't start talking about Islam until you understand both. When we were studying ifta in Michigan and later in Egypt and in Kuwait, I'll never forget in Michigan, for example, one time we were sitting with the sheikh and he sat there listening to a sister on the phone for, I'm going to say, 20 minutes. And then he responded to her because he had a fatwa hotline with something that used to be called ayana. And it's just like a fatwa hotline for some people to call anytime they need to across the country. And so after that, he said, "Sister, if you just give me your number, I'll call you back right now. I have to look into this." So then me and some of the other students, we were giving Sheikh a hard time. "Yeah, Sheikh, you don't know how to give the fatwa, man? Well, you know the answer on this one?" He said, "No. She's talking a lot about a medical issue that I am not a medicine professional. I'm not a doctor. I do not study these things. So I have to call up a doctor, a medical professional, and ask them all about what she said before I issue this fatwa." And this is a fundamental aspect. So when you go on the line, on internet, and you bring fatwas from India and Saudi and so forth, this is not a good idea. Those fatwas, in most cases, were intended for those people living there in those circumstances. And in many cases, Imam Shafi'i in his book, Al-Um, he explains this point. He says, people challenged him, "Imam Shafi'i, you're this great scholar. We were your students in Iraq. Now you're in Egypt. On the same issue, you're giving a different fatwa." He said, those people had a different reality in relation to this legal issue. So I'm giving them the proper one that's acceptable to him. Somebody might say, is Imam Shafi'i condoning Egyptian Islam versus Iraqi Islam? And does that mean there will be an American Islam? God forbid. Yes, this is what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. And I'm not inventing it. If you're listening to who's the ones inventing it. A lot of people criticized Abu Hanifa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu when he started suggesting what we would do if Muslims lived in a land in which Islamic law was not the authority. Dar al-Kufr. He started talking about this. And he was like, this is too hypothetical. He said, but when it comes, we need to have a basis for them. Because he was that deep, rational thinker. Abu Hanifa, that's what he represented. It was something very unique to him amongst the 4 schools of thought. And my heart is broken when I see somebody saying, I follow Abu Hanifa, and they have absolutely no use of their rational senses, or they're not studying and going deep into the religion as he and his students did. Amongst all the schools of thought, the one circle of knowledge you could have guaranteed that you would have had students questioning the Sheikh and challenging his knowledge was Abu Hanifa sitting with Muhammad Shaybani, Az-Zufar, and Abu Yusuf al-Qadi. For sure. And you'll find when you study his school of thought from the legal books, from old, not from the one that's now from the world where they're saying only one opinion, that's it, we don't. The Hanafi madhab has deep opinions and arguments within its own school. I sat with a sheikh who's from Halab, which is a very strong Hanafi community in Syria. And I asked him, why don't you teach this? He said, because people are common folk, they can't understand this. I said, why would you say that about the people who Allah, basically talk to, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe. This message is for everyone. Everyone should be exposed to it. Everybody should be learning it. No one should stop learning. No one should say, I'm dumb. This is going against a fundamental core necessity of Islamic identity and law, which is the human rational intellect, حفظ العقل, and تطوير العقل, to develop. So now, when you look at many of the scholars like Taha Jabal al-Alwani, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, and even many of the fatwas of Mufti Taqiyuddin Osmani, Hafizullah, you will find they are tapping into statements he made related to what is now called fiqh al-aqalliyat, the jurisprudence of Muslims living as a minority. See, many of the Islamic fatwas and books and things were written in terms of an Islamic state or an Islamic society in which everybody was ruled by that. We have to go deep in our religion, in our society, learning different disciplines, learning from different perspectives. You can't just learn anything from one guy or one book or one school. You have to learn from all. And whoever tells you no is going against hundreds of ayahs of the Quran. And they're trying to control you. They feel the need to keep you under control. The freedom to learn, the encouragement to learn and grow and develop and understand is a fundamental founding trait of Islamic identity. There was a time when people traveled from Europe to Spain and Baghdad. We talked about it 2 Ramadans ago. And they would learn Arabic for the purpose of learning something now called liberal arts. Who invented liberal arts? The study of language, sociology, history, mathematics, and the need to have a good grasp of all of those things to be a person of a strong intellectual background. This was invented by Muslims. This is why the first 2 multidisciplined universities are found in Morocco and Egypt in the history of mankind, before the European Enlightenment that was built on the backs of Spain tradition and civilization that was done under Muslims before the call of the Pope and her friends and their friends Isabella and so forth to wipe out all Jews and Muslims from the Iberian Peninsula and what is now called Spain. My dear brothers and sisters, I'm trying to encourage you to realize this movement against us is trying real hard to amp up and give value and identity to a group of people who do not understand our religion, and make the rest of us want to give up our religion as a result and just go along with whatever they're saying we should do and say and think. This is what's happening. A cultural hijacking of the world to put everybody into a hamster wheel and keep them under control. There is no religion on the face of the earth, there is no civilization that produced such academic and deep thought, rich tradition and legacy of growth and development from a human standpoint other than Islam. That's a fact of world history, and many non-Muslim historians, a professor who won the Nobel Prize for, I'm thinking, literature at UCLA said this. It's a quote of his. The powers that be are trying to make you feel guilty, like you should be ashamed. And I'm here to tell you, the take home from our first part of the sermon today is that read in the name of your Lord who created everything. That is the very beginning of who we are. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم السلام. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Dear brothers and sisters, the Holy Quran has very strong terms against intoxication. إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر. The devil would like to cause major conflict among you with alcohol and intoxicants, and to prevent you, وَيَصُدُّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ, to prevent you on remembering God and to keep up with your daily connection with Him in the salah. Anything that does that is a harmful intoxicant. There are many people in our community that are into alcohol and drugs. And there are many people in our community who waste away lots of free time and don't take any benefit from it. Those are very similar. And the root cause of these things is a sickness. It's a lack of comfort in reality. It's a need to try to get happiness because whatever I do with most of my time, I don't enjoy it. I'm not passionate about it. It doesn't give me worth and value. It is very important that we do two things. Number one, if you're a parent and your child is passionate about something or someone in the Islamic halal way, do not use the Birrul Walidain card to force someone to take a life career that they will have to do every day that they're not passionate about. And number two, do not force them, using a Quranic injunction of respecting and honoring and loving your parents, to marry so-and-so if they're not comfortable with that person. It's not meaning that you shouldn't guide them and advise them. That's our role. But we should make sure that we are not setting somebody up for misery because of an idea of using religion to control them. If you're really interested in what's best for your children, then you would want to do what makes them happy, as long as it's halal and productive and good. So many people throughout history have used religion to take control, and they convince themselves, oh, well, this is my right. But if you look at the harm that's done, you will know it's not proper religion. Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they had certain cultural things. If everybody's cool with it and comfortable with it, then yeah, fine. But if you know that they're not, then it becomes a problem, enforcing it. So that's number one. Number two, when you come to find out, and I say when because it's not an if, you will come to know of people who are using alcohol and drugs that are Muslim. Do not be judgmental, shunning. Do not ruin their lives more by judging them and bringing down a harsh judgment upon them. This will only send them worse down that path. These people should be treated as they are. They're sick. They're dealing with a sickness. Who decides, I want to go use drugs so I can ruin my life, man? Awesome. Nobody does that. They get sucked into it. It's a trick. It's a sickness in the heart and the mind. And they get brought into it because of circumstances in their life that were not happy. Circumstances of emptiness, a loss of something, a lack of feeling of unconditional love and support that they needed, a feeling of pressure of sorts, a lack of passion and desire about what they're doing with their life. These are the reasons why they fall into that. So how do you support someone that you know that falls into this? You be the conduit of compassion and try to help them with their problem. You don't punish them. They're already punished by virtue of the reality they're in. That is a living punishment. This is very important, that we try to help people. And that we try to, if we think we're not necessarily prepared to do that, we find somebody else who can help that person. And if we're sincere about helping people, they will be helped. If you study about Bill and Bob, the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, just do that. Study that. There's things to study and learn from. So many. I could sit here and extend this khutbah. I'm over time already. I could extend this khutbah. Just go to Netflix. Forget about all of the useless entertainment of fiction. There are hundreds of super valuable documentaries that if you're not a big reader, it will be like reading what would have taken you 12 hours to read a book. An hour and a half documentary will give you the knowledge available that is trying to be marginalized by the powers that be in the information structure that is controlled by a certain intended power system to keep you busy with Donald Trump and his nonsense. There are things going on that we should be part of. And if people start to learn about things and talk about real issues that are affecting all of us, our health, our lives, our children, our wealth, our money, death, destruction, so many things going on that we could be helping with. And we could be a positive role of change because of our knowledge of Allah, His message, and our accountability when we die, and how that taps into the real world that we live in. If we do that, we will be blessed. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, give us the motivation that you gave us to come here to listen to this khutbah, to learn something that will make us better people. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us be people that when you call us, that we come at a timely way. Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive us for our sins, our laziness, our weakness, our shortcoming. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us a nation as we once were, that was a civilization, respected and learned from and honored as it represented dignity and a high ground of intellectual greatness. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us a people who are not caught up in a hamster wheel, who are free to learn and grow spiritually, intellectually, growing and developing until the time when we eventually will be put into 6 feet deep under the ground. Ya Allah, please help us all to realize that when we visit the graveyard, we see many tombs and the date of birth was after we were born. Ya Allah, help us to realize what that means and how we live and how we use this big blessing of intellectual, creative ability that you have given us. Ya Allah, help us to be a people who bring positive, good change, who grow and develop, who inspire others to do good things and leave a stamp on the world that has your light upon it. Ya Allah, please help us to be a people of righteousness, of piety, of wisdom, of patience, of understanding, of compassion, of mercy, of forgiveness. Ya Allah, please remove from us arrogance, envy, greed, lust, haste, emotional reactionism. Help us to be the rational beings with spiritual, moral fortitude that you created us to be, and send your peace and blessings and mercy upon your final messenger Muhammad.